You know, it's interesting how some people, some figures just, they capture our imaginations even decades later. And
Yeah,
Princess Diana is definitely one of those people.
absolutely.
Like, we all know the fairy tale, we know the tragedy, but what we're going to try and do today is go beyond the headlines.
Yeah.
You guys wanted to know about the real Diana, and that's what we're going to do with this deep dive.
I think it's really that duality that makes her story so endlessly fascinating to people.
Yeah.
You know, she was the people's princess, adored by millions,
Right.
but she was also a woman who struggled privately, grappling with pressures. I think we can only imagine.
Right. And so let's unpack this.
Okay.
Diana's early life, it wasn't all tiaras and palaces, was it?
Not exactly. No. She came from an aristocratic family, like you said, but Diana's childhood was marked by her parents' very public and bitter divorce. And it was a very, very public divorce.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, imagine being 8 years old
Yeah.
when your family drama becomes global news.
Yeah, that's got to leave a mark.
Oh, absolutely.
And I'm wondering, how much do you think that early exposure to like public scrutiny and instability, how much did that shape her relationship with the media later on?
Oh, I think it's a really interesting question. And it's something I think about a lot with her life because we know she was quite shy as a young woman, but there was just this undeniable magnetism about her, too.
And then Prince Charles enters the picture.
Right.
It's the late 1970s, and we have this seemingly ordinary girl who's captured the heart of the future king of England. Although, did you know that he actually dated her older sister first?
I did know that.
Can you imagine those family reunions?
Oh, it's such a layer to that story, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
But I do think, you know, regardless of those early connections, the world became utterly captivated by them, by Charles and Diana.
Yeah, 750 million people
That's incredible.
glued to their screens for the wedding of the century.
Unbelievable.
It's just really hard to fathom that level of global attention, especially when you consider what we know now about what was happening kind of behind the scenes.
Yeah, I mean, what the public saw and what was happening behind palace doors, as they say, were two very different realities.
Yeah.
I mean, Charles's continued relationship with Camilla Parker Bowles really cast a long shadow over their marriage.
And it must have taken such a toll on her emotionally. You know, you can only imagine being this young woman trying to navigate royal life with all of its pressures, and then the media is constantly watching you, and then your marriage is just crumbling.
Right, and this is where I think you really start to see Diana's strength.
Okay.
Because she could have so easily retreated inward,
Yeah.
but she didn't. She confronted her struggles head on, even publicly addressing her battle with bulimia.
And that was huge.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, this was a time when eating disorders were so stigmatized, and she was a princess, and she's talking about this openly.
Exactly.
It's got to make you wonder how many people felt less alone.
Absolutely.
Right.
I think it was a pivotal moment for a lot of people because by revealing that vulnerability, she really challenged that very traditional image of royalty. And I think she paved the way for more open conversations about mental health.
Yeah. It's like she was breaking free from this gilded cage. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Finding her voice not as a princess, but as a human.
Yeah.
And this is where things, I think, get even more interesting, because in the middle of all this turmoil, her humanitarian work just starts to flourish.
It's true. It's like she channeled her pain and her experiences into advocating for others.
And she wasn't just lending her name to a cause or two. She was really in it.
She was really in it.
She was doing the work.
Yeah, and I think that's what set her apart from a lot of people.
Yeah.
She understood the power of human connection.
She just had this way of connecting with people who felt invisible, didn't she?
She did.
People who had been forgotten about, and she wasn't afraid to go there to these, like, really tough issues.
No, she wasn't. And that's what made her such a powerful force for change in the world, I think.
Yeah.
Think about her work with people with HIV and AIDS
Right.
in the 1980s.
A scary time.
A time when fear and misinformation were everywhere.
Yeah. And she touched their lives literally.
Yes.
That picture of her shaking the hand of a man dying from AIDS without gloves.
Powerful image.
It just sent shockwaves around the world.
It really did. You know, it was a small gesture
Yeah.
with huge implications because she challenged that stigma head on.
Yeah.
You know, showing that compassion is more powerful than fear. And there's a quote from a doctor who worked with her.
Okay.
And he said she did more than anyone else to destigmatize AIDS.
Wow.
She showed the world that people with AIDS deserve compassion, not fear.
And then there's the landmines.
Oh, my gosh.
I mean, I still get chills thinking about her walking through a live minefield.
In Angola.
In Angola.
It took so much courage
It did.
to do what she did. But she brought the world's attention to the devastating and often hidden consequences of landmines on civilians.
And it wasn't just a publicity stunt for her.
Right.
She was really affected by it.
Yeah.
I read that she said, I wanted to see it for myself.
Wow.
I wanted the world to see it. I wanted the world to be aware of this horrible problem.
That's what's so incredible about her. She didn't just lend her name to a cause, she put herself in it.
Yeah.
She used her position to elevate the voices of people who weren't being listened to.
It's like she redefined what it means to be royal.
Yes.
Like, yeah, there's the glamour, there's the privilege, but then there's this deep empathy and this
Right.
willingness to stand up for people who couldn't stand up for themselves.
Totally. And I think people responded to that authenticity, to her genuine desire to make a difference.
And she made a difference. She really did. But her time to do even more was cut short.
It was.
The early 90s, things really start to unravel with Charles and their marriage.
It was a very public unraveling, wasn't it?
Very public.
That separation and then the divorce. I mean, every detail was poured over by the media.
Scrutinized.
It was a really tumultuous time, and I can't imagine the pressure she was under.
To have your every move, every emotion analyzed and then broadcasted to the entire world.
I know. It's no wonder she found comfort in her humanitarian work and in her sons.
Yeah, and even with all that going on, she seemed to be finding her footing again.
Yeah, there was a sense of her coming into her own power, taking control of her own story.
There's this quote from her around this time that I always think about. She said, I want to be a queen in people's hearts, but I don't see myself being queen of this country.
Wow.
And it just speaks to her desire to connect with people on a human level. Forget all the royal stuff.
Totally. And it seemed like she was finally finding her voice, not as a princess, but just as a woman.
And then that night in Paris,
Yes.
August 1997.
It's hard to believe it's been over 2 decades.
I know. That car crash, it just, I don't know, it felt like the whole world stood still.
It really did. It was one of those moments you never forget where you were when you heard the news.
Do you remember where you were?
I do. I was at home, and I had just woken up and turned on the TV, and I couldn't believe it.
Yeah. It's just, and then the outpouring of grief
Oh, my God.
from all over the planet.
Everywhere, people felt like they knew her,
They did.
that she was part of their family.
Yeah. 1 million people lined the streets in London for her funeral.
1 million people.
A sea of flowers and handwritten notes.
It's amazing.
It says a lot about the impact she had.
It really does. And that impact hasn't gone away.
No.
Just look at William and Harry.
Her sons.
They've both become strong voices for mental health awareness,
Yeah.
talking about how their mother's death affected them.
Yeah.
It's like she gave them the torch and they're carrying it on,
Yeah.
It's
really inspiring to see.
It is.
To see them talking so openly about mental health.
And her legacy. It's more than just her sons.
Oh, yeah.
All the charities and the organizations that she championed, they're still feeling the impact of her work to this day.
She really shined a light on those forgotten corners of the world.
She did. And she used her voice to speak for the people who couldn't speak for themselves.
Exactly.
And that's a really powerful reminder to all of us that no matter who you are, you can make a difference.
So I think as we wrap up this deep dive into the life of Princess Diana,
Yeah,
we've learned a lot about the woman behind the icon.
absolutely.
And maybe more importantly,
Yeah.
she's left us with a challenge.
A challenge to look beyond the surface, right? To see the humanity in everyone.
Yeah, and to use our own platforms, whatever they may be, to make the world a little brighter.
To fight for the things we believe in, even in small ways, because it all makes a difference.
Well said. It seems like Diana's greatest legacy is the inspiration she continues to give us all these years later.
That's beautifully put.
To make the world a kinder, more compassionate place. And on that note, we'll leave you to think about the incredible legacy of the People's Princess. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep with us.